A great challenge still lies before us, Florida. And as we try to understand this new normal, we must remember, things aren't normal. Not yet. So let's all keep doing our part to stay healthy until it is. We are One Florida, and Florida Blue remains committed to the one place we've ever called home.
Well, everyone, welcome to this special segment of the Blue Seat, sponsored by Florida Blue. We are very excited about this segment for a couple of different ways. We have, first of all, Meg Baldwin, Executive Director with the Refuge House, who's going to be helping us with the subject matter that is really, really touching and really can be a challenge for some of them. And that is when a life-saving mission is hard to sell. And sell being for donors, maybe sell to the community, sell for support. But that's our subject matter that Meg is going to help us with. And again, who better to help with this particular subject than Meg Baldwin? Meg, first of all, congratulations on your recent announcement of your retirement. We're excited to hear about that as well. And to see that wonderful smile on your face, so apparently you're excited about it too. But for those who do not know, Meg Baldwin, Meg, of course, Executive Director of Refuge House, where she has served there in that role for 15 wonderful years. She is a 2008 recipient of the Florida Council Against Sexual Violence Warrior for Women Award, 2010 recipient of the National Organization of Men Against Sexism Lifetime Achievement Award, 2016 recipient of the Florida Commission on the Status of Women Leadership Award, and she is a recent nominee of the Ennie's Legacy Leaders Award. We are so excited about that as well. And in case you did not know, our viewers, in case you did not know, Meg is also a magna cum laude graduate of the University of Minnesota Law School. So we've got that law degree as well too. Meg, welcome to the Blue Seat.
Thank you so much for having me, Felina. It's a joy to be here. And thank you so much for your wonderful work and support of all the nonprofits in our region. I've relied on you, and many others have as well. And so thanks very much for your great, important work for all of us.
Oh, it is an honor and it is a pleasure, Meg. So thank you so much. You know, before we actually jump into our subject, which I'm really passionate about talking to you about, before we jump into that, please tell our viewers a little bit more about the Refuge House and the mission.
Thanks, Felina. We are the what's called the state certified provider of domestic violence and sexual assault services across the 8 counties of our Big Bend region. And what it means to be state certified is that we're required to meet all kinds of standards and licensing requirements to kind of reach that gold seal level. And of course, you can understand why having strong services is especially important for the work that we do. Because as you mentioned, people come to us in extreme crisis at moments where their personal safety, even their lives, are at risk at the point that they reach out to us. So we take our responsibility really as a public safety agency very, very seriously in light of really the enormity of our mission and what it means to people to know that we will respond in a way that's useful and restorative to everyone that we serve across our counties.
Yes, and you know, Meg, considering the mission and also what some perceive as a difficult subject to discuss, right? We've addressed that. What challenges have you confronted with garnering support from corporate, government, and sometimes maybe even individual donors to support your mission?
I think that the challenges are maybe not unique, but certainly certainly real in communicating the importance of our work and to create the kind of emotional and spiritual connection that is important to nurture between particularly private donors and our agency's work. It's one of the reasons why, of course, that's a challenge is that it's uncomfortable for people to talk about domestic violence and sexual assault, because those behaviors and those kinds of victimizations are often raise, reactions of fear, of distress, and of anxiety, and so people tend to back off from those conversations that are so important to create the kinds of relationships that we need to support us. I think that on the other hand, people by and large, are appalled by domestic violence and sexual assault, all these forms of gender-based violence. So in a way, we don't have to overcome any kinds of confusion about whether our mission is important. It's more a matter of people feeling personally, again, connected in a way that feels safe to them, to be with us in our mission. The other issue is relates to the safety of the survivors that we serve, and as many nonprofits know and work through, a commitment to non-exploitation of the personal circumstances of the people that we serve. Our entire agency is built on a guarantee of safety and confidentiality between our agency and the men, women, and children that we serve. So we can't tell the kinds of personal stories that connect with that so often connect with individuals about our clients. Many times victims of domestic violence continue to live in tenuous safety circumstances for months and sometimes years after their initial contact with our agency, and as they work through escaping an abusive relationship and restoring their lives to a real feeling of personal security. So we can't advertise that person's story and her circumstances, first of all, without putting her in further danger, and also without betraying the trust that she's placed in us to keep her story and her circumstances private. So that, again, as you suggested, creates a certain kind of just protocol and practice for how we communicate our mission. I think for us at Refuge House, we're fortunate that our local media, the Tallahassee Democrat, each of our TV stations, certainly our nonprofit community, is very alert to ways in which they can communicate our advocacy mission. So what are victims in our region experiencing over COVID, for example? The Tallahassee Democrat was very receptive to doing a substantial story about domestic violence homicides that have been occurring in the rural areas since the spring, and since the stay-at-home orders were first put in place across our region. And because of that interest in our advocacy message, people learn about what we do and how important it is, not necessarily just because we are communicating that information, but because the rest of the community is doing it too. So I would really suggest to other agencies who may be in this kind of a similar position that we are, to really reach out to communicate the circumstances of your clients and the need that your agency addresses in every possible way that you can, not only through a fundraising letter, not only on your website, but also through all the community vehicles that are available to you to inform the community as to why their support is so important.
Wow. Meg, you just answered like 2 additional questions that I had listed, which is great. But I do want to backtrack to one thing that you mentioned. So I had mentioned like 3 different sectors with trying to garner support. Corporations or companies being one of them, and considering like possibly workplace sexual harassment or things that may happen in the workplace. Have you found that to be a difficult conversation, or at least a difficult bridge to open the door to speak with leaders at companies regarding the subject matter, or even trying to garner support of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, that the other real what we know about domestic violence and sexual assault is how widespread those harming behaviors are, and how many thousands of people are affected by domestic violence and sexual assault across their lifetimes and in any given year. What that means is that even in circumstances where a company leader, a business leader, for example, doesn't especially want to acknowledge that domestic violence or sexual assault has affected that leader, that leader's workplace, their own family, even that person themselves. We know that in virtually every sphere of our community, it's a likelihood that domestic violence and sexual assault has affected that person or that organization in some way. So we almost don't have to make the case because the case has already been experienced by that person and that organization. There are some dramatic examples. For example, where there's a domestic violence homicide occurs, where a workplace loses an employee to domestic violence. It's not uncommon that in those circumstances, then we're asked to come to that company to talk to the employees who are grieving the loss of that person within their workplace family, and also struggling to sort out what red flags they might have seen, how they can protect the next person who may be at risk somewhere down the road. So there's a real yearning for more and better information and a sense of permission to be able to talk directly about these really grievous losses that people experience as a result of these forms of harming behavior.
Thank you for that. I think it's so impactful. Again, as we look at trying to break the silos among the various sectors, being government, business, nonprofit, education, I mean, all of them are impacted by the mission that you are so passionate about. And so having that conversation, I know, can be a challenge, not only for the mission that you have, but also other nonprofit organizations that have a very challenging mission to possibly present and try to address. So thank you for sharing that. I had one of my questions, which you did address earlier, which I thought was really good, is again, just your advice to other nonprofits who have that challenging subject matter, and how do they tell the story of that challenging subject matter. And you branched out, which I thought was great, beyond just the website and social media, but really garnering the support of the community. So thanks for sharing that as possible other resources. What other resources has the Refuge House been able to use to be able to tell the story beyond maybe media and then your website? Any other strategies or techniques that you have?
I think I kind of go back to the message initially. I'd also just like to encourage everyone to tell the truth. Um, we do have a challenging mission to communicate in a certain way because so many people unfortunately do want to deny how pervasive domestic violence and sexual assault may be. May be frightened to bring those issues up in conversation, even within their own family. But the power of the truth is great. And let me just tell you this story as an example. We know that that childhood sexual abuse is a pervasive and extremely damaging experience for any young person to undergo, particularly with the perpetrator as a member of their family, or a family friend or step parent. And a couple of years ago, we decided to launch a billboard campaign that directly confronted the issue of incest, of father-daughter incest, on billboards across the Big Bend region, in some of our rural communities too, where some of those issues are especially controversial or hidden. And we did get some stressful responses to some of that messaging. But I got a letter from a woman who lives in our community, who, when she saw one of those billboards, she had to pull her car to the side of the road and stop driving because she was so emotionally overwhelmed by seeing this message. There was so much on her side. She was at that time in her late 60s. She'd been sexually abused by her own father over a period of years when she was a child. Her family did not believe her and shunned her as she tried to disclose what was happening to her to others in her family and community. She said that seeing that billboard 50 years later was the first time she ever felt supported in the experience that she had sustained as a young person. And she wrote this very kind letter to us. And I must say, also sent us notification that she had willed her entire estate to refugees as a result of feeling so deeply understood by our agency's mission. So I just want to say again that the more we tell the truth about the realities that the people that we are supporting experience, the more authentic our messaging is, the more meaningful it is, and the more response you will get on every level to what your agency means to people at every stage of life.
Well, Meg, thank you for yes, technology, you've got to love it, right? But speaking of, I found it very interesting. Speaking of triggers in that particular story, Meg, you've shared your story of sexual assault. And when I worked for the March of Dimes, I had, of course, March of Dimes' mission is to save babies. And I had lost a child. And I had found the transition. I think I had worked there for maybe a year, Meg, before I could even share my own personal testimony of having lost a baby. But I'm finding myself working in a job of helping other parents cope through the loss of a baby. So in your experience and having experienced sexual trauma yourself, how did you transition and how did you overcome maybe triggers of your own trauma to be able to serve those that you are hired to serve?
I think it's such an important question, Felina. And I would want to, I would emphasize to people who are interested in working kind of over the long haul in advocacy capacity, where you yourself are part of the team of folks who've experienced the similar harms and traumas. It's very important to pay attention to your own healing process, and to be both because you're important, and each of us deserves to ask for and receive the care and attention that it takes to feel that we're moving forward in a positive way from an extremely negative experience. So healing is important for each of us, but also it's very important so that you can maintain your empathy and understanding about the dynamics of what happens to someone who's subjected to that kind of behavior or that experience, but also to be able to work with another person without sort of bringing your own stuff to it. Yeah, if you understand what I mean. Where you're not asking another victim to help heal you, because you've kind of already done that work. So I would want to just communicate that message to everyone, because many of us who work in advocacy and helping professions are here for a reason, because we know what that experience is and how important it is for somebody to be there for us. But take care of yourself first, sort of like that. Put the oxygen over your face before you try to take care of your babies, because you need to be able to have that strength and that ability to be fully present for the other person, rather than having that person be there for you. So I would like to emphasize that. I also think it's difficult to. Because many of our missions stigmatize victims. So it can be stigmatizing for a person to say I'm a rape victim, because people have certain beliefs and reactions to that disclosure that can be disempowering. For the person who has said it out loud. I mean, it wouldn't be tough to disclose if there weren't consequences, sometimes negative, to doing so. So I think it's important too for our community to show their support for all survivors, so that those of us who are leaders can be as genuine as we need to be to communicate that indeed what we say, that all of these experiences are universal, is true, and is true even for us.
Right. And that kind of leads perfectly into my next question for you, and is, how do you maintain your love for humanity when on a regular basis or a consistent basis you see the worst or witness the worst from people? So how do you personally do your self-care and maintain that love for humanity?
I think when I first started working at Refuge House now 15 years ago, I think that was one of my biggest fears, that the personal contact with the many hundreds, even thousands of victims that we provide services for every year, and then over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that the cruelty that our clients have experienced would overwhelm me. And I think that fear is real, and you don't want to pretend that it doesn't exist, because it is discouraging to see that people are capable of such wounding behavior towards another person. I think that what helps me is the feeling, as I do every day, that the number of people who are supporting us in our mission and who care about the survivors that we serve far outnumber the number of perpetrators that we have to acknowledge are not what can I say here? Who continue to not be held accountable for their behavior and their actions. And to let the goodness of the community as a whole motivate and inspire you to try to continue to address that people need help, people need to be encouraged towards different kinds of norms and behaviors and options for how they can resolve conflict, that all of that is possible. And we've seen change, especially among the children that we work with. We see a frightened and sometimes angry child receive services and learn how better to address their own upset feelings than to lash out. We see how feasible, how possible, how real it is that when you give people another way to cope with their own feelings of distress, you can make a change for a lifetime.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, again, 15 years under your belt with the Refuge House. I'm sure they have been just amazing roller coaster ride. And if you looked at, that's one chapter of your life, So Meg, if you were to look at the title of the next chapter in your life, what would you call it? What would that title be?
Oh, this is, I feel I have learned so much, certainly, sort of over the course of my whole life, but certainly having been at Refuge House for these years, I feel like I've just become a better person for having been here in this chair and having myself kind of learned how to ride the roller coaster that life is with a greater confidence and joy. So I don't know if I have a chapter heading exactly, but I believe that this next chapter of my life is going to be a lot more fun. Just because I am just more I guess just more comfortable with myself. I feel myself more safe in the world in a lot of ways because of that, and so much more appreciative of everything that's just so rich and vibrant and lovely about living here with all of us together day to day. So check in with me in a couple of years, Felicia, and we'll see what we call all that.
Well, I can't wait. If the next chapter is nearly as exciting as the past, then it's going to be a wonderful ride, Meg. And I'm just so grateful to have known you and very just amazed, and I just think it's wonderful what you do. And I've always just admired the work that you have done and the dedication and passion. So thank you so much for spending time and sharing a little bit with us about your experience overall in the Blue Seat. We are grateful so much, and definitely hope that somehow our paths will cross in that next chapter. It would be a great honor to be a part of it. Meg, again, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Felita. Thanks, Annie. Thanks, Madison, for helping. And we'll see you around, Felita.